stone, you will have noticed that this has been an extraordinary year for fungi, and so it's been an amazing opportunity for us to get out there and really sort of add stuff to the NPT database, particularly priority species that we have in the fungi list. While I've been posting stuff on the NPT Wildlife app, which I know you're all familiar with, lots of other people have been joining in at all levels of experience, and either posting photographs of stuff they didn't know, and I've been trying to identify them online, and then adding the species recorded by A, B, C, D, E, whatever, to the database in MapMate. You know, there hasn't been an autumn like this for fungi in my memory for a very, very long time. So it's been absolutely amazing. And one of the places where I've sort of concentrated a little bit more than normal this year is in Knoll Country Park. Please say to me if the slides are not showing properly. Please interject and tell me. You should be looking at a slide now that says Knoll Country Park, okay?
Yeah,
with two photographs, right? As you enter Knoll Country Park, the Knoll we'll call it, from the Fairyland entrance, you come up along the road to the car park, and there's quite a lot of oak and birch scrub on either side of the road there, which is maturing quite nicely. This year that has been a very, very good place for fungi. Where are we? One of the first things that you'll notice, actually, if you come into the park from the other entrance on Kimler Crescent, is quite a large troop of Clitocyphi geotropa trooping funnel, which is a pretty common toadstool, but there's quite a lot of it there, so it makes quite a nice show. And then there's this thing turned up in large amounts near the play area next to the second pond. And it was putting on an extraordinary show earlier on, sort of in the middle of September. So that was quite nice. That's pale brittle stem, Candoleomyces candoleanus. And then a lot of fly agaric this year, everywhere. More than I've ever seen ever before. Quite a lot of it in the Knoll. In fact, there's quite a bit of it around the car park itself. So that's been putting on quite a nice show too. And then this thing, which is called Russula pretavisa, bypassed brittlegill. God knows where it gets that English name. I have no idea. It's a pretty easy toadstool to recognise. It's a brittlegill, it's a Russula, and it's a sort of coffee colour cap and sort of striated sulcate edges to the cap are quite striking. And it grows with oak mostly. I think I've only ever seen it with oak. Actually, it may grow with some other deciduous trees, but I've only ever seen it with oak. So it's you know, it's putting on quite a nice little population in the Knoll at the moment. And growing along with it, this is a milk cap, Lactarius quietus. It does have an English name, but I can't remember what it is. And you can see in the photograph there the spores, the white spores, which are covering some of the caps on the right-hand side of the photograph. It's a pretty easy Lactarius to recognise because it only grows with oak. It's got an ectomycorrhizal association with oak, and it's got this lovely zoned cap. So there's ring-like zones on the cap. Other than that, it's a fairly drab-looking thing. And variable web cap, well, that's common virtually every year anyway, but amazing amounts of it this year. Huge groups of it in the Knoll and various other places as well. And the young fruiting bodies of Cottoneris anomalus are usually a beautiful sort of lilac-y bluish colour, which you can see actually in some of the young specimens there. But the gills of the really young specimens, as the cortina sort of separates from the cap, are absolutely beautiful colour. So although it's very common, it's still a very beautiful mushroom. And then any number of Cortinaria species actually growing in the Knoll at the moment. This is Cortinarius pilatii, which is one of the smaller ones. It's not much bigger than the Bonnet's Mycena, and it's fairly closely related to Cortinarius decipiens and Decipienoides, which also grow in the Knoll as well. So we've collected maybe about half a dozen or more well, more than half a dozen Cortinaria species to date from the Knoll, after only 3 sort of collections, and we've still got some more to identify as well. So Cortinarias are putting on a good show there, but you'd expect that. They're late fruiting toadstools, and Cortinarius is the biggest genus of toadstools anyway, so you'd expect to see a lot of them in any year. Yeah, Rose, give me the heads up on this. This is common cavalier, Melanoluca polioluca, and quite a large group of this came up in one of the Celtic wildflower beds. So and it's a really nice dark form of it. I don't think I've ever seen such a dark form of it before. It's usually more of a sort of a lighter colour brown than that. So it's a really attractive thing, particularly when you see the way in which the white gills contrast with it. Okay, moving on. Loads of porcelain fungus on the beach, in the beach woods in the Knoll, so that's always nice to see. And this is one of my favourite toadstools. This is orange grisette, Amanita croquea. The Knoll is a sort of speciality place for that. It does occur elsewhere in East Talbot, but it's faithful to the Knoll. Every year it comes up in small groups, so it's a really lovely thing to see. Mostly grows with the beeches, in the big beechwood next to the second pond. Sometimes it comes up quite close to the beeches, which are planted in the grassland area as well. Okay, but this was a real surprise for me. And when I saw this, first of all, I looked at it, I thought it was a Lyophilum, which is a type of dome cap. But it isn't. It's an Entoloma, and it took me ages to identify it. It's Entoloma lividoalbum, which has about 2 or 3 other records for Wales. I don't know if any of the rest of you have ever seen it anywhere else. I certainly haven't. This was a brand new species for me. So I was really chuffed about this. I think this is a genuinely scarce species in Europe, from what I can tell from looking at the monographs on European Entolomas. So really nice. There's so much of it there, and it's still coming up in large groups in the verge alongside that oak scrub I showed you in the photograph earlier on. So, you know, if you're up there, walk along that road and have a look at the verges there next to the trees. There's loads of it coming up. It's really lovely. Okay, so the Knoll's been very good. There've been loads of other things there as well, but I've just shown you some highlights. Nantucavern pinewood has been good this year. So that's what the pinewood looks like. It's Scots pine on coal spoil, really. So the Nantucavern, of course, was one of the mining areas in the Dilys Valley. And there's been huge amounts of primrose brittlegill, which is the dark purpley coloured toadstool in the photograph. That's Russula sardonia, growing with saffron milkcap, Lactarius deliciosus, which is the orange thing in the photograph. And it's plastered all over the floor of the pinewood there. I mean, I was talking to Emma about this when we did the course for the Lost Peatlands last week. It's maybe not so much that this year there's a much bigger diversity of fungi. It's the gross amounts of the different species that are coming up, which is fantastic. I mean, we're seeing huge numbers of common species. It's absolutely putting on spectacular displays. It's fantastic. Okay, and in that same pinewood, the common bolete is slippery jack, Suillus luteus. In fact, the other Suillus species you normally get with pinewood are very scarce there. You don't see much Suillus granulatus or variegatus there for some reason or other, even though we had loads of those species when we did the Lost Peatlands course last week. Okay, in a similar habitat. But lots of this. This is a little bonnet, Mycena vulgaris. It's called the vulgar bonnet, which I think is an awful name for it. But that's what it's called. It's just a translation of vulgaris, really. Why didn't they just call it common bonnet, which is what vulgaris means? I don't know, but there we are. I don't make up these names. Oh yes, I do occasionally. But anyway, no, that's Mycena vulgaris, and it's one of the common bonnets in pinewoods. There's lots and lots of it in the Nantucavern pinewood. Okay, and then Aberpergum, again, just highlighted one or two places which have been really good this year. I'm sure you all know the Aberpergum area. Again, this is Coalspoil, and there's this lovely meadow there, which is really quite a diverse meadow as far as grassland species are concerned. And I don't mean grassland species of fungi, I mean grassland species per se. And then again, it's surrounded by scrub, which contains quite a lot of birch and willow and some oak and quite a lot of aspen as well, and a few other things. It's quite a good thing. And there in the distance, you can see the turbines of Maes Gwyn. Okay, so what do we see in Aberpergum? Well, this is Cortinaria subbalaustinus, which I think is a lovely Cortinaria. It's a lovely web cap with a sort of zoned orangey brown coloured cap. It's absolutely beautiful. The photograph doesn't do it any justice, really. And there was quite a big clump of that there. I don't come across that very often, to be honest with you. So really happy to see that. This was a new species for me, Mycena abrahamsii, which was growing in the sort of the soil-rich verges there. And this Cortinaria saturninus has been extremely common this year. I have never ever seen so much of it, and it tends to grow in large groups like this anyway. And when it's in, it comes in all sorts of different shades of brown, but the dark brown form of it, which you can see here, is a really striking thing. And one of its characteristics is the white remains of the veil around the rim of the cap. And you could see actually the cortina on one of the young specimens here, that cobweb-like veil over the gills, you can see in the bottom part of the photograph. So Cortinaria saturninus, huge amounts of it at Aberpergum, but this year there was lots of it in Dyffryn Woods and a few other places as well, Pentrocloidae, etc. And then Gyfalchi, actually Hilary and I were up there today. I was really surprised to see this in the Sitka forest there. I've seen Mycena flavescens quite a lot. There's a lot of it in Margam Park, for instance. It grows in the verges alongside the forest, but I've never seen it in a conifer forest before, and there was masses of it, absolute masses of it. So really happy to see that. That was a new species for Sitka spruce for Wales, actually. So that was really good species to add to the Sitka spruce forest list. And nearby the Sitka spruce forest were full of Lactarius deuterimus. This is one of the other orange milk caps, which has a specific association with spruce. The books say that it will grow with pine occasionally. I've never ever seen it growing with pine. And I think that all the European texts say that it's virtually exclusively associated with spruce. And that's, you know, one way you can tell common saffron milkcap from false saffron milkcap, the trees they grow with, because common saffron milkcap only grows with pine. But there are other milkcaps that are orange as well, so you should bear that in mind. But that's a Lactarius deuterimus, the false saffron milkcap. Okay, slide. And then again in Gyfalchi, any number of rhodocolibias coming up this year. Masses of Rhodocalibia butyracea, which is called buttercap because it's got a buttery feel to its cap, very sort of slippery and soft. I think it's a really beautiful species, and as it dries, the cap changes colour, it gets lighter and lighter, as you can see in the photograph there on the left. But also, you know, growing in the same area, there were Rhodocalibia maculata, the common white Rhodocalibia, and also Rhodocalibia prolixa, which is the least common of all of them there. But Rhodocalibia prolixa really loves Sitka spruce forest, and you often see rings of it. I mean, huge amounts growing in rings, and you can tell it quite easily from Rhodocalibia butyracea because it doesn't really dry out to the same extent, and the spores are a different shape completely. Okay, and I'm going to end by showing you this, and this is you know, one of my pet subjects, really, Russula fuscu rubroides. I don't think it has an English name. I'm sorry about that. It's there. You can see on the right hand side the distribution map, which is in the NBN Atlas, and that cluster of dots. I can't show you with my cursor. I'm sorry, because it won't work on this screen. But that cluster of dots around Neath Talbot are our records. Those are our records. And NBN, in their wisdom, put them all down there as unconfirmed, which is rather sad, because quite a lot of them have now been confirmed by DNA analysis. I sent specimens to Kew in the early days when they were actually doing DNA analysis without really complaining very much. And every single collection I made was confirmed as Russula fusco-rubroides. So I'm happy now that I can identify Russula fusco-rubroides. It only grows with Sitka, and it's one of our priority species. And this year has been so good that we've been able to do gap analysis with it. In other words, we can actually, knowing what we know about Russula fusco-rubroides from the last 3-4 years, we could say it only ever grows with Sitka, which fits in with the European data as well. And then, so this year, there's so many toadstools and mushrooms around, we thought we'll go to various Sitka spruce forests and see if we can find Russula fusco-rubroides in them, because there'll never be a better chance of doing it than this year. And sure enough, we turned it up in several of them. And in fact, this afternoon, we turned up a really big population of it. We saw 200 fruiting bodies in about 20 square meters in one Sitka spruce coop this afternoon. Absolutely amazing how much there was there. So that's really important, because now there's a collection of Russula fusco-rubroides from Allen Forest Park on the left. It's a beautiful toadstool. It's got a very dark purpley sort of coloured cap, but it's the stipe, the stem, which has this beautiful flushing in it. Now, you could confuse it with Primrose brittlegill, which only grows with pine. And Primrose brittlegill has primrose yellow gills at maturity, which Russula fusco-rubroides doesn't have. And also, if you add ammonia to the gills of Primrose brittlegill, the gills will go pink, and that doesn't happen with Russula fusco-rubroides. And the other thing I guess you could confuse it with is trying to think what Russula torriloides, which does occur in NPT, but it's an extremely rare national species. In fact, I think it's on the red list for Europe at the moment as well. That occurs in white mice gwyn. It only grows with pine. So if you're in a Sitka spruce forest, you're not going to see Russula prolixa. But Russula oh God, I've lost my flow now. The other Russula I was talking about only grows with pine. So, but it grows with lodgepole pine and Scots pine, and also with Corsican pine as well. Torriloides, Russula torriloides is the other one. They also differ in their reactions with guaiac, which is a chemical reaction you can use for identifying certain Russula species. So it's a beautiful thing. So there on the right-hand side is the map for Neath Talbot. So you can see we really have a large amount of Russula fusco-rubroides, a nationally scarce species in Neath Talbot. And I'm sure if I blitzed Rhondda Cynon Taf as well, I'd turn it up there. But I've not done that to date. And I can probably add 2 more blue dots to that map as well, since I put that map together. So it's very, very nice the way in which we're building up this distribution in Neath Talbot of this priority. This is one of our priority species. So that's one of the things we've been able to do, a sort of gap analysis as a result of the sort of abundance of toadstools this year. Okay, so some fungi have been particularly abundant this autumn. I'll just show you some of them. I bet Nicola wasn't expecting me to show that photograph. Barry Stewart took that photograph because Nicola spotted this beautiful population of fly agaric when she and Barry and I think Laura were out doing something or other up in Mice Gwyn or somewhere in that area, somewhere above Glenneath. So yeah, that's one of the species that's been super abundant this year, and this is the photograph Barry took of it, showing this beautiful. He was lucky, really. The 3 of you were lucky to see such fine specimens, because often when you come across it, it's in quite a state of decay. And there's some lovely sort of button stage ones up there in the top left-hand side of the screen as well. Up in the very top left-hand side of the screen is one of the Sitka spruce cottonaria species. So it would have been nice if you had photographed that or collected it. So I'm not sure which one that is, but it could be one of 3 species. I know which group it belongs to, but yeah, I couldn't identify it from that photograph. Anyway, so that's fly agaric, which has been really abundant. Cottonaria saturninus has been really abundant. That's a photograph from Dyffryn Woods. I mentioned this earlier on. And Lacaria lacata there on the right-hand side. It's got an English name. It's called the deceiver, simply because it comes in so many different forms. It's very deceptive for identification. The masses of it in the knoll, in the grassland in the knoll, was absolutely outstanding. And we saw loads of it this afternoon when we were walking through a beechwood near Gavalki. It's a common species anyway, perhaps one of the most common species in the fungal flora of Neath Patalba, and certainly in the UK in general. But it's really nice to see it in huge troops like that. And I don't know whether Emma will make any comments on this. I have never seen so much Lyophilum ever in my life as I've seen this year. And I've seen all 3 varieties of it: Lyophilum dicastes var dicastes, Lyophilum dicastes var loricatum, which you're looking at there, and Fumosum. I've seen all 3 varieties of it, and it's absolutely outstanding how much there is. It's quite an easy thing to identify, although you could, I guess, confuse it with a tricholoma. They're called knights, the tricholoma, or possibly with that sort of entoloma that I showed you earlier on, Entoloma lividoalbum, because Lyophilum dicastes does come in a warm brown colour as well. Huge amounts of it everywhere. And then tawny funnel. I love this thing. It's such a lovely pastel colour, sort of yellowy brown. Absolutely beautiful. Masses of it in Sitka spruce forest at the moment. Clouded funnel, again, a really common toadstool, coming up in large troops, particularly in Sitka. And then finally, I think this is the last section, the Keys has been quite good, particularly that area of grassland, the grassy verge in the area next to where the lay-by, where people park to go on the coastal path. So meadow puffball has been coming up there in quite interesting amounts, Lycopodium prudensi. And pale poison pie, Heviloma velutipes. You can only identify this with certainty from common poison pie by doing an iodine reaction on the spores, which I did with this collection. So I know it is pale poison pie. It is actually paler than Heviloma crustuliniforme, which is the common poison pie. But yeah, that's pale poison pie. Some people think that it's probably more common than Heviloma crustuliniforme anyway, and that most people who have identified specimens of Heviloma crustuliniforme have actually misidentified it, as it's probably been Heviloma velutipes. Okay. Inocybe fusidula, which is still there, I think. It's still, there's a fairy ring of it in the grassland next to that lay-by. Quite a toxic species. And again, this, I have never seen so much of the miller, Clytopilus prunulus. This actually is one of the toadstools that we have. That name for it is really very, very old. And it was probably called the miller in the Middle Ages. It's called the miller because it's white, but more than that, it smells of flower very strongly. It has a mealy, flowery smell. So that's where it gets its name. But again, it's probably still in. I haven't been down the Keys very recently, but it was there last week. So it's probably still in the grassland there if you want to see it. And in the same area, lots of fairy ring champignon, Marasmius oreades. This is the quintessential fairy ring former. Quite a lot of that down there at the moment. Oh, there is another section. Oh yes, Polenna forest. Yeah, okay. What did I want to show you here? This blew my mind. Although Emma tells me she's had this in Tower, so sort of stole my thunder a little bit. This is a very, very scarce bullied Suillus flavidus. and it's almost instantly recognizable. First of all, it's quite slimy. It's not as slimy as the slimy bolete that grows with larch, which is called Suillus bacillus, but it does have a slimy cap. But the thing about it is it's so small. It's one of the smallest Suillus species I've ever seen. So when you see it, you think, God, that's not a bolete, surely. And then you turn over the cap and you see the pores and you think, my God, this is a really small bolete. And if you find a small bolete like this, and it's growing with, pine, sorry, not larch, then it's going to be jelly bolete, almost certainly. So look out for that. That's a really nice record. And that is it, I think. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I'm going to